Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, Mike Lindell sent me a note yesterday. He has a special for the 6-piece towel set, $25 when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com, use promo code Joey. You'll get the $25 offer on the 6-piece towel set, and I promise you, these will be the most comfortable, the most absorbent towels that you own. mypillow.com, use promo code Joey, get the 6-piece towel set for just $25. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Breaking news late afternoon yesterday, the U.S. Department of Justice charged Hamas leaders over terrorist atrocities in October 7th Israel attack. We have all the details for you there. And students are back in class and already starting the disruptive anti-Israel protests that crippled the final weeks of classes back in the spring. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre did not want to answer Peter Doocy's question of why the vice president sounds different at different campaign stops. We have the latest update on that. And all 170 South Carolina legislative seats are up for election this year, with about 17 being competitive, we're told, in the South Carolina legislature.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
As college classes are starting back, the NYPD arrested 2 people yesterday as dozens of screaming anti-Israel protesters swarmed Columbia University and Barnard College on the first day of classes. And the U.S. Justice Department yesterday unsealed criminal charges against Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar and other leaders over the terrorist attack on October 7th. Let's start with that story. The criminal complaint filed in federal court in New York City includes charges of conspiracy to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization, conspiracy to murder U.S. nationals, and conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction, resulting in death. It also accuses Iran and Lebanon's Hezbollah of providing financial support and weapons, including rockets that were used in the attack. The complaints marks the first time that U.S. prosecutors have formally called out the masterminds of the October massacre. Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a video address that this is just the start of the U.S. effort to target all aspects of the Hamas operation.
Today, the Justice Department unsealed charges against Yahya Sinwar and other senior leaders of Hamas for financing and directing a decades-long campaign to murder American citizens and endanger the security of the United States. As outlined in our complaint, those defendants, armed with weapons, political support, and funding from the government of Iran and support from Hezbollah, have led Hamas's efforts to destroy the state of Israel and murder civilians in support of that aim. In its attacks over the past 3 decades, Hamas has murdered or injured thousands of civilians, including dozens of American citizens. In the early morning hours of October 7th of last year, Hamas, led by these defendants, committed its most violent, large-scale terrorist attack to date. During the attack, Hamas terrorists murdered civilians who tried to flee and those who sought refuge in bomb shelters. They murdered entire families. They murdered the elderly, and they murdered young children. They weaponized sexual violence against women. On October 7th, Hamas terrorists murdered nearly 1,200 people, including over 40 Americans, and kidnapped hundreds of civilians. They perpetrated the deadliest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. This weekend, we learned that Hamas murdered 6 more hostages, including Hirsch Goldberg Poland, a 23-year-old Israeli American. We are investigating Hirsch's murder and each and every one of the brutal murders of Americans as acts of terrorism. We will continue to support the whole of government effort to bring the Americans still being held hostage home. The charges unsealed today are just one part of our effort to target every aspect of Hamas's operations. These actions will not be our last. The Justice Department has a long memory. We will pursue the terrorists responsible for murdering Americans, and those who illegally provide them with material support for the rest of their lives.
Of course, the charges stem from the Hamas attack of innocents on October the 7th, killing around 1,200 Israelis, taking hundreds more hostage. Yesterday's charges come after the Israeli Defense Forces recovered the bodies of 6 hostages, including 23-year-old Israeli-American Hirsch Goldwyn-Paulin, in the tunnels beneath Rafah in the Gaza Strip. Hamas chief Sinwar is believed to be hiding out somewhere in the Hamas tunnel network beneath Gaza. It's unclear how much contact he has with the outside world. Sinwar was appointed the overall head of Hamas after the killing of Ismail Haniyeh in Iran and sits atop Israel's most wanted list, and the world's most wanted list for that matter. Other Hamas leaders charged include Marwan Issa, the deputy leader of Hamas's armed wing in Gaza, who helped plan last year's attack and who Israel says was killed when fighter jets struck an underground compound in central Gaza back in March, and a whole list of Gazan leaders, names of which you would not recognize. The Department of Justice said at least one person whose name they did not specify in the complaint is expected to be brought to and arrested in the Southern District of New York. It's going to be interesting to see just how much effort and how quickly they can bring some of these people in. Now, moving on, classes have started for the fall semester, and so have the protests in New York City. Students at Columbia University and Barnard College resumed their chaotic demonstrations that literally paralyzed Upper Manhattan at the end of last semester in the spring. You remember how some of these students literally took over buildings, how they just closed down the final semester of classes. A lot of graduation ceremonies were just not held because of these protesters, or you might call them domestic terrorists. The New York Post reported, quote, the rowdy demonstrators formed a picket line and banged drums as scores of students waited in lengthy lines to pass through security and gain access to the Ivy League school in Morningside Heights. Protests also formed outside of the neighboring Barnard College, CU's Columbia University's sister school, where 2 demonstrators, including one shrouding their face and head with a scarf, were taken into custody. The Post reports the protesters, including many brandishing signs declaring resist until victory, could be heard chanting over 100,000 dead, Columbia, your hands are red. And don't cross the picket line, we must honor Palestine. Now, if these schools allow these students to do this and to disrupt classes again, shame on them. And parents should stop sending their kids to these schools if they allow this. According to the report, at least at one point, about 150 students stretched around the block to enter via the tall iron gates at Broadway and West 116th Street, trying to get in because the school has imposed security entry points, and you have to have an ID to get in to guarantee or to show that you're a student. Inside the campus, the alma mater, which is a bronze statue dating back to the early 1900s, located on the steps of the main library on Columbia University's campus, had been painted with red paint by noon. Now, again, these protests just months after the Columbia campus was overtaken back in the spring. It set off a wave of anti-Israel demonstrations at colleges nationwide. Columbia's embattled president, Manoush Shafiq, resigned weeks ago following last year's period of turmoil, during which she brought the NYPD onto campus twice to clear out tent encampments. Since Shafiq's resignation, interim president Katrina Armstrong vowed to balance students' rights to free expression and foster a safe learning environment for the fall semester. Well, let me give you a little hint here, President Armstrong. I would say that your priority should be the safe learning environment and not necessarily ensuring that these students have a place for their free expression. If they're going to literally close down classes, disrupt graduations like they did last spring, They should have never been allowed to do that. The school, according to the Post, also circulated new protest guidelines in a bid to limit disruption. Now, I'm sure these protesters, these people who are chanting these anti-Israel slogans, these students who are carrying flags supporting Palestine, I'll bet they were very happy to get this new printed guidelines for protest. I'll bet they'll really pay attention to it, don't you? It's 91 pages. The institution says that it should address many of the concerns that were brought up back in the spring. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York also vowed to crack down in a bid to avoid a repeat of last year's demonstrations across the state. She had a virtual meeting with New York College presidents last week, according to the report. She urged school officials to enforce disciplinary codes and impose swift action to punish wrongdoers, according to someone on the call. We'll wait and see on that as well to see if Governor Hochul's wishes are carried out by these college presidents. We'll see. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. PhD Weight Loss wants you to know, yes, you can. You can get back to your ideal healthy weight. Yes, you can get back into sizes you thought you'd never see again. And yes, you can get rid of that harmful belly fat, all without becoming dependent on medication loaded with side effects. Hi, it's Joey Hudson here. PhD Weight Loss encourages and equips you to lose weight the healthy, natural way and keep it all for the rest of your life. Dr. Ashley Lucas, a licensed registered nutritionist, developed a solid plan that works. Trust me, I lost 30 pounds. You see, PhD Weight Loss removes the guesswork. They literally tell you exactly what to eat each day while you watch the pounds melt away. But they also teach you to think about food differently and to learn to anticipate and navigate situations that make you want to indulge. PhD coaches will teach you to believe finally that yes, you can do it. With no gimmicks or lifelong medications, finally lose the weight and keep it off. Yes, you can. Call today. PhD Weight Loss, 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Continuing this Wednesday, glad to have you join me. Yesterday, I spoke to you a good bit about the accent that Vice President Kamala Harris was called out on as she spoke to a group in Detroit, Michigan on Labor Day. And she's done the same thing in other parts of the country. She, while she was in Georgia, she spoke with a somewhat Southern accent. It's called a lot of attention. There's been a lot of mockery. And I played to you yesterday different clips from Kamala Harris. Many of you commented, and you can keep those text messages coming. I appreciate those. Email me, joey@joeyhudson.com as well. Well, Fox News reporter Peter Doocy yesterday, it obviously he hadn't missed this either. He asked White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre about the vice president's changing accent when speaking to certain crowds on the campaign trail. Now, Doocy, when asking Karine Jean-Pierre immediately tried to shut him down. He said, "Since when does the vice president have what sounds like a Southern accent?" Here's the exchange.
A different topic. Since when does the vice president have what sounds like a Southern accent?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well,
I mean, this is...
She was talking about unions in Detroit using one tone of voice.
Is this something that you think...
Same line...
Okay, Peter.
That she used the same line in Pittsburgh, and it sounded like she at least had some kind of a Southern drawl.
I mean, do you hear the question that you're... I mean, do you think Americans seriously think that this is an important question? They care... You know what they care about? They care about the economy. They care about lowering costs. They care about health care. That's what Americans care about.
So,
that's what they want to hear.
This is something...
They care about, your colleague just asked me about, what basically we talked about, went back and forth about democracy and freedom. That's what they care about. I'm not even going to entertain some question about the president. It's just, hearing it sounds so ridiculous.
Well, but hearing it is...
The question, I'm talking about the questions, is just insane.
Is that how she talks in meetings here?
I'm just, Peter, we're moving on.
Yeah, we're moving on. She doesn't want to talk about this, does she? You think Karine Jean-Pierre is kind of tired of fielding questions about the vice president by this point? Don't you know that she would just love for Kamala Harris to go away? Because this is adding more work to her job. Yes, she's the White House press secretary. But look, Kamala Harris is the vice president. Any question is fair game. So I shared this with you yesterday, and just to put this into context, in case you missed yesterday's show, if you did, go back and listen to it. You can listen anywhere you listen to your podcast. Just search for Joey Hudson, Just the Truth, or you can listen on the Odyssey app as well. But I gave you several examples yesterday of the vice president having a different accent depending on the group she's speaking with. Now, what caused the fuss here and what Peter Doocy was talking about, and I want to share it with you again. I want you to hear this again, was the vice president talking to a group in Detroit, Michigan on Labor Day.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
Now, Peter Doocy referred to this as a Southern accent. Is it? Do you think that's Southern? Some of you who text me, one said that she was trying to imitate Martin Luther King. Another said she's trying to imitate Barack Obama. You know, Obama was kind of like this. Obama would change his accent depending on the group he was speaking with. If it was a black group, he would sound more black. He would use some of the slang that you'll hear in that culture. But I'm not sure. That's not. I don't know what that is. I'd love to hear what you think it is. Send me a text, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. But it definitely is different than how she normally sounds. Now, Jean-Pierre tried to dismiss the question, as you heard, suggesting that Americans don't care about Harris's accents and that they care more about the economy, which under the Biden-Harris administration has hit record high inflation and continues to struggle. Now, I would argue that people do care about Kamala Harris's accent because it kind of shows you what kind of person she is and what kind of candidate she is. If she's changing her accent because she thinks she has to sound like the group that she's speaking with. Does that bother you? Do you think it says something about the vice president when she's pretending to have an accent like that with a certain group? Do you care? Do you agree with Karine Jean-Pierre that the American people aren't interested in the vice president's accents? I loved Doocy's parting shot there when he said, "Is that how she talks in meetings?" It's a valid question. I mean, Jean-Pierre should answer that. Has Jean-Pierre heard the vice president speaking like that in some of the official White House meetings? Your text messages are welcome, as are your emails. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Big news yesterday. Hot dog eating champ Joey Chestnut is back. The competitive eater gulped down 83 hot dogs in 10 minutes during a competition on Monday, Labor Day. Not only did he beat out arch rival Takuri Kobayashi, Chestnut also beat his personal best record of 76 hot dogs. Wow. 83 hot dogs. His competitor also beat his personal best, eating 66. After the competition, Kobayashi announced his retirement, saying, quote, "I put everything on the line for this, and I'm done." I mean, does this not make them sick? Would you do this? I mean, I've never quite understood these eating contests. How could a human being sit down and eat 83 hot dogs and not just be sick as a dog? Pun intended. I mean, really, does this not make them deathly ill to eat 83 hot dogs? Does it not do something to your stomach? How do you digest them? I mean, and I would imagine his abdomen would just have to be bloated to have 83 hot dogs in his stomach. I don't get it. I get sick thinking about it. Bad news for Costco members. For the first time in 7 years, Costco's raising your membership if you're a Costco member. The warehouse store first announced its move back in July, saying it was going to raise them. Well, September 1, this week, Annual membership fees rose by $5 for U.S. Canada Gold Star individual members, business and business add-on members, bringing the yearly total to $65. Executive memberships increased by $10 for a fee of $130. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Whether you're replacing a broken appliance or maybe you're just upgrading, you're totally remodeling the kitchen, when it's time to get those new appliances, when you're ready for them, you don't want to have to wait weeks or even months to get started using them, right? Well, that's not the case when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. With over 11,000 square feet and 1,500 appliances at any given time, you can buy today and use today quite often. I'm talking about shopping with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. It's worth the short drive over to Pickens. Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team over there, they'll take good care of you. They have an award-winning service department, expert installation, extended warranties, and at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they treat you like family. You're more than just a credit card swipe to all the team over there. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with manufacturer's warranties that cover parts and labor. You owe it to yourself, if you're looking for a new appliance, to head over to Pickens to Discounted Appliance Warehouse online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. A couple of the headlines from overnight: a Russian missile strike in Ukraine killed at least 50 people. The 2 ballistic missiles hit a military training facility and a nearby hospital yesterday, wounding over 200. According to Ukrainian President Zelensky, the strike destroyed part of the Poltava Military Institute of Communications. People found themselves under the rubble. Many were saved, Zelensky said on his Telegram channel, adding that he had ordered a full and prompt investigation. A former aide to two New York governors, has been arrested by the FBI, accused of secretly working as a Chinese agent. Linda Sun and her husband, Chris Hu, were both arrested Tuesday morning at their Long Island home, 6 weeks after it was raided by FBI agents. Both are expected to be charged under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, the act that the president's son, Hunter Biden, probably should be prosecuted under. Sun has worked as a deputy chief of staff in the governor's office from 2012 to 2023 under both former Governor Andrew Cuomo and current Governor Kathy Hochul. Prosecutors say she and her husband made millions by working to further the interest of the Chinese government, including forging Hochul's signature on a letter and helping Chinese companies earn pandemic-era contracts. And the Democrats want to argue and want us to believe that Hunter Biden's and the president's brother, Jim Biden, their contact with the Chinese government, the millions of dollars that they've made, that, there's nothing to that. Doesn't matter. There was no influence peddling there. As we are officially in the campaign season now, after Labor Day kicked off the fall campaign season. The general election season, of course, has a lot of races, not only the presidential, which is what all eyes are on. That's our attention pretty much, is who's going to be our next president. But there are a lot of down ballot races that we need to be watching as well. A lot of local elections, city, county councils, school boards, state elections. In South Carolina, there are no statewide office holders. In other words, we're not going to be voting on a governor, lieutenant governor, any of the state constitutional officers. But every single member of the South Carolina legislature will be on the ballot in November. All state House members and this year, state Senate members are on the ballot. Now, senators, of course, serve 4-year terms. House members serve 2 years. So every other year, we have all of them on the ballot. So how many districts can expect to see true races, spirited races, if you will? The state newspaper did an analysis that considered 2022 results and the partisan leanings that result from most recent redistricting. And they're estimating that 17 out of the 170 legislative districts are probably worth watching in November. Now, many of those seats, they were determined in a primary because, yes, we have a GOP-dominated legislature here in South Carolina. So in those districts that are heavily Republican, in a lot of them don't even have Democrats running. But there was a lot of competition during the Republican primary. We saw some primaries where you had 2, 4, 5 or 6 different people running for that seat. So those seats were pretty much settled in those primaries. But there are some that are going to be quite interesting that we're going to be watching in the coming weeks. In the Senate, only 27 of the state's Senate's 46 seats have contested elections in November. This election is the first time that the newly drawn Senate districts will have contests since the 2020 census. And there were some interesting parts of that. Republicans, of course, control both chambers. They, according to the state, can look to go on offense in the Senate in just a few of those seats. 7 seats, Senate districts, 17, 26, 29, 30, 35, 36, and 39, according to the state, can be seen as competitive when you consider the partisan breakouts of those districts, according to analysis by what the state newspaper is calling Dave's redistricting. Dave is one of their analysts who writes for the newspaper. All 7 of those seats are held by Democrats right now. Most of the districts are in the Midlands and the PD area of South Carolina, none in the upstate where I live here. Senate Minority Leader Brad Hutto, a Democrat from Orangeburg, conceded Democrats will play defense in most of those Senate seats, but added that if turnout numbers are unusual for a presidential election, and I'm sure as a Democrat, he's counting on Kamala Harris turning out a lot of people, he says that some could change and there could be some tight races there. Hutto is confident that Democrats will hold all of their seats, and he says they could pick up 1 seat. He argues that Senate District 41, which is a race in the Low Country, which features Democrat Rita Atkins and State Representative Matt Lieber from Charleston, who defeated State Senator Sandy Senn. Now, Sandy Senn was one of the 3 sister senators. All 3 of those female GOP senators lost their races in the primaries because of the issue of abortion. You could always count on these 3 ladies opposing what the GOP caucus typically was supporting when it came to restrictions on abortion in South Carolina. It cost them their seats ultimately. Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey says he expects to be able to add to the number of GOP senators, and says they certainly won't fall below the 30 members that they have now, but he says he hasn't made a decision on where his caucus will invest money on some of those that he can pick up. 2 Senate districts to watch closest are Senate District 17, which is a district that includes parts of Chester, Fairfield, and York counties. It's represented by State Senator Mike Fanning. District 39 is another district that's made up of Berkeley, Calhoun, Colleton, Dorchester, and Orangeburg. Again, sort of an outer lying area there. It's represented by State Senator Vern Stevens. Both of these are Democrats, but because of the demographics in the state now, could potentially be won by a Republican. Both Fanning and Stevens were the only 2 senators to vote against the current redistricting plan. Also, a race in Senate District 29 is one that Republicans could pick up. It's currently held by Senator Gerald Mallory, who is a Democrat in Darlington. He's been in the Senate since 2002. And even though President Joe Biden carried the district in 2020, Republican Governor Henry McMaster carried the district in 2022 during his reelection campaign. The demographics of that district have changed somewhat. That could be one that the Republicans could pick up and add to that 30-seat majority. In the Midlands, the most anticipated race could be Senate District 26, which features State Representative Russell Ott. He's a Democrat from Calhoun County, and Republican Jason Gary. This district was drawn to have Democratic leaning of only about 3 points based on previous voting patterns, and this according to Dave's redistricting. State Senators Nikki Setzler, a Democrat from Lexington County, and Dick Harpootlian, a Democrat from Richland County, were drawn into the same district in 2020. Nikki Setzler opted not to run for re-election, and as you may know, Russell Ott defeated Harpootlian in the primary in an upset win. So that seat we definitely are going to see a change in. Democrats currently have 36 seats in the state house. They need to reach at least 42 seats to no longer be a super minority. That's probably not going to happen. Only 54 of 124 House seats have contested races in the November election. The House has more opportunities probably for Democrats to go on offense, again, because there's just so many Republicans holding those seats now. 10 seats in the House, according to the state, 8 of which have incumbents running for re-election, are expected to be competitive. Of those 10 seats, Democrats and Republicans each hold 5. Now, Republicans are especially watching 3 House seats, District 64, 116, and 122. These seats were flipped in 2022 when the GOP made some real gains. The problem with these, or a potential problem, is all 3 of these fall within Representative Jim Clyburn's congressional district, the only Democrat congressman in the South Carolina delegation. Those were won by very small margins. It'll be interesting to see what happens, too. Also another one, House District 12, State Representative Daniel Gibson ousted former Democrat State Representative Ann Parks. This was down in McCormick County. Representative Daniel Gibson is a great friend of mine, and we were all elated when he won that one. The Democrats did not see that one coming because Representative Parks had been in that seat for a long, long time, decades. And you can bet the Democrats are going after that one for sure. South Carolina House Majority Leader Davey Hyatt was quoted in the state newspaper of saying, when you flip a seat, it can be considered a toss-up in the next election. I imagine they'll come back stronger than ever and try to take back those seats, and that they will. They'll spend some money. That's why we have to pay attention to these down ballot races because they're very important to us. So if you live in one of these areas, particularly like Representative Dan Gibson's in McCormick, get out and help him. Better yet, write him a check, send him a check, help him out. Any of these seats, because we need to win every single one of them, plus we need to pick up some more and have a supermajority in both the South Carolina House and the South Carolina Senate. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. I shared with you yesterday some of the latest polling, and we have an update even to that. A couple other polling groups are showing that former President Donald Trump could potentially win big. One of those pollsters has ties to South Carolina. I'll give you those updates in just a minute. First, to our text line, Tony writes, Joey, this comment made by Ronnie White about too many white guys. This is exactly why there's so much division in this country. If a white guy said that there are too many blacks on the football team, he'd be crucified. This is in reference to the comment that was made about Clemson's loss over the weekend to Georgia, and this former I don't think he's playing anymore, is he? NFL player said that Clemson had too many white guys on the field. That's why they lost. Jerry writes, hey, Joey, maybe she'll end up with a Russian accent or maybe Chinese. Jerry's responding to the discussion yesterday about the various accents that Vice President Kamala Harris has. Yes, I promise you, if she thought having a Russian accent would help her, if she thought having a Chinese accent would help her, you'd hear her trying to speak those. Let's follow her. Maybe she'll go to Chinatown in San Francisco. Wonder how she speaks to people in Chinatown. I'd love to hear her trying to speak Chinese, wouldn't you? Christy writes, we have one TV hooked up in my house, and we do have Roku. But that said, my husband has a weather channel he watches on there for a few minutes each morning before leaving for work, and the only thing in the evening that is watched is YouTube fishing channels and a few homesteading channels and cooking channels. I get my, quote, news on my phone, mainly from your podcast. There you go, Christy. The only place you need to go for your up-to-date news is on Just the Truth podcast. Thank you, Christy. She says, I haven't had satellite TV in 3 years. I turned it off and swore never to watch any of the propaganda again. I don't miss it. Again, responding to, I talked on yesterday's show about cutting the cord. And the direct TV right now, and I don't know if maybe today they're back up, but they were having contractual issues. And so a lot of people who were wanting to watch some of the sporting events like the US Open on ESPN on Sunday weren't able to watch it because DirecTV was arguing with the networks. They did this last year, and I left. I canceled my service and went elsewhere, went to YouTube. DirecTV has a habit of doing this. But I can promise you that they won't discount your monthly bill. They'll charge you for the full month, even though you weren't able to get all the channels you'd signed up for while they're having their contractual disputes. Thank you again for your comment, Christy. Ginger writes, I have the cheapest DirecTV plan, so I can get local channels, 4, 7, and 13. I would drop DirecTV if I could get local channels. Antenna hasn't worked well for me before. Do you get local channels? I do on my YouTube plan, Ginger. I sure do. You can get local channels on YouTube, and it's for a fraction of the cost. Again, this is not an endorsement of YouTube. It's just worked for me. And I have been very happy with it. Texter says, this is Sherry from Georgia. I never heard of anyone said if it was legal for cackling Kamala if she could legally use the money Biden raised for his campaign. Is it legal, or is she just not using that money? Well, it is legal, or at least they say it is, and nobody's challenged it. And that's one of the reasons that the Democrats in the Democrat Party were trying to rally around Kamala, because according to what they reported, she was the only one who could use that. I think it was like $90 million or maybe more than that. A lot of money that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had raised for their reelection campaign. And I think that's why the Federal Election Commission will allow her to use it and would not allow other candidates. They very clearly said that if Kamala wasn't running, that money could not be transferred over to another Democrat nominee. And that's why the party wanted Kamala in there, so they could spend that money. They could spend that 90 plus million, whatever the number was. Now, whether it's really legal, I don't know. The GOP hasn't really objected to it, so I'm going to assume that it is, or they'd be tied up with lawsuits right now, I would hope. Our text of inspiration today, Joel sent us one, said, you are confined only by the walls you build yourself. God bless. Well, thank you, Joel. That is true. You're only confined by the walls you build yourself. Good advice. So yesterday I shared with you some of the latest polling that was released, and there was a good bit of that released on Monday. Some updates yesterday, though. According to Fox News, most swing state polls show Vice President Kamala Harris leading in the swing states that will decide the election. But 2 southern state pollsters are taking issue with that, and they have former President Donald Trump up big in those. The polling by Insider Advantage and Trafalgar in 7 battleground states finds Donald Trump on a path to 296 electoral votes, suggesting that Harris has already lost her momentum. Matt Towery of Georgia-based Insider Advantage says that Trump is ahead in Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina, and down by just 0.4% in his home state of Georgia. He noted that both he and Robert Cahaley, now Robert Cahaley is from South Carolina with his Trafalgar group, which handled Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, were both in the top 3 upholsters in the 16 and 20 cycles because their methodologies allows them to pick up some of Trump vote that some of the other pollsters might not be able to get. And, you know, that's something we've all talked about a lot, isn't it? There are people out there who are going to vote for Donald Trump, but they may not tell you that, or they certainly won't tell some stranger calling them doing a poll. So, to be sure, all of Trump's leads are narrow and within the margin of error, according to these two pollsters, meaning that states could still go very well for Trump on Election Day. Towery believes Harris is stalling now and that her novelty has worn off. Basically, the honeymoon's over. He said the momentum that we were seeing after the Democrat National Convention has sort of come to an end. Surges in Democrat enthusiasm seen in the polls after Harris replaced Biden have also slowed, according to these two pollsters as well. So they claim that if Trump presents a realistic version of himself, this could become a real turning point, like the Carter-Reagan debate that basically sealed the deal in 1980. He's, of course, talking about next week's debate and how Donald Trump is able to perform during that debate next week. It's going to be a big night, folks. And by the way, let me remind you that we're going to have a debate watch party at Willie Taco in Greenville on Lawrence Road, just like we did back in June. And I'd love for you to come join us if you live in the upstate of South Carolina, western North Carolina, or that northeast area of Georgia. It's at Willie Tacos on Lawrence Road in Greenville. You're welcome to come. Free admission. We're going to have the big screen TVs all scattered throughout Willie Tacos. It's a great place. You can grab dinner and just enjoy the company of a lot of patriots just like you. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and if we're going to win in November, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Don't forget to take advantage of the MyPillow special, $25 for the My Towels 6-piece towel set when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. We're back again tomorrow. Hope you will be too. Remember, God's got this. He's still in control.